Okay, go ahead, Andy.
All right. This is a script for remotely conducted open meetings. Confirming member access as a preliminary matter. This is the Harbor and Shellfish Advisory Board Chairman Andy Lowell to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. I will do the roll call at the end of this introduction. Good afternoon. This open meeting of the Harbor and Shellfish Advisory Board is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, Harbor and Shellfish Advisory Board is convening by video conference via Zoom app as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. For Zoom meetings, please note that this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and to take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials that have been provided members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I note otherwise. Meeting business ground rules. We're now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking, please. If members wish to engage in a conversation with other members, please do so through the chair and take care to identify yourself. For items with public comment, after members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment to those members of the public that have joined the meeting via Zoom. Members of the public who wish to speak must state their names and be acknowledged by and speak through the chair. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. Members of the board, to confirm your presence, Mr. Brace, Mr. Sidlowski,
Here.
Mr. Bossy. All right, I might put your speaker on, Dave. Mr.
Yeah, I just
got
it.
Mr. Franzuto.
Here.
Is Ms. Andrews?
Here.
And for the record, I see Sheila Lucy.
Yep, I'm here.
All right, and we've got Tara Riley.
Here.
Dan Pronk out there.
No.
Okay, I noticed one member of the public, Mr. Hosier. I'll call this meeting to order of the Harbor Shellfish Advisory Board. Today is April 6th, 2021. So we have a approval of our agenda tonight. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman.
So moved, Mr. Chairman. Oh, sorry.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Brace?
when we ended our creation of the agenda on Friday, I thought we were done, and then I did the minutes on Monday, and we should have on there the discussion of the dinghy racks.
I see.
And under old business, I guess, or new business, since Sheila just brought it up. And I don't know. I don't know if we can take a vote on any of that. I guess we'll
Okay.
find out from Sheila when she thinks that's going to go before the select board. If we get another cycle, then we'll have a chance. I don't know. We'll see how it
All
goes.
right, well, Sheila can fill us in during her report. We can discuss about it then. Thank you for that, Mr. Brace. Ginger has approved, made a motion to approve tonight's agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. In favor, Mr. Sadlowski,
Aye.
Mr. Bossy,
Aye.
Mr. Brace. And chair votes aye. That was seconded by Mr. Franzuto. Approval of minutes, draft meeting minutes for March 2nd. Has everybody had a chance to look them over? And are there any adjustments to be made? If not,
Mr. Chairman,
yes, Ginger.
2 typos on March 2nd. It's first, not frist, and warden, not warder. And I think on the oyster lease that Mr. Carlson thought it was more than a month before Mr. Lambert would be ready. But other than that, that's it.
Thank you. Other board members, Mr. Bossy, Mr. Sadowski. Okay. So if there's a motion to approve the minutes for March 2nd with amendments made, we'll entertain that now.
So moved. Second.
Motion's made by Mr. Franzuto, seconded by Mr. Bossy. All in favor, Ms. Andrews,
Aye.
Mr. Sadowski,
Aye.
Mr. Brace. And the chair votes aye. Draft minutes for March 16th. Anybody have any adjustments to be made? Typos? Not seeing any, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
All right, I'll go with Mr. Franzuto, move to approve. Ms. Andrews approved, seconded the motion to approve March 16th minutes. All in favor, Mr. Bossy? Mr. Sadowski?
Aye.
Mr. Brace?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Under the chairman's report, April 15th, Nantucket Waterkeeper Informational Forum. There's a link to register there, YouTube link. Marine Department report. Sheila, please.
Okay, so yeah, we're getting started. Today we launched the dinghy docks. We lost a pile over the winter for one of the fingers for the floating dock. So we were able to get Mohawk Marine, which saved us a considerable amount of money. So we didn't have to pay somebody to mobilize out here because they were already over here at the Bull Basin. So we fixed the end of the pier. The wave attenuator at the end of the pier was missing some 12 by 12s and a piling there. And then we also had put a piling in for one of the fingers for the floating docks. Sadly, we're still using the wooden floating docks, hoping that this is the last season. We keep hoping that, but I'm really hoping it this time because they're really in tough shape. We have 2 of those in place with the fingers because we had to have it set up so that they put the finger in exactly the right place so that puzzle could go back together. We're hoping to put the rest of them in this week, and then we'll start the process of like redecking, resecuring things, getting the water line run down and getting the electrical line run down and for lights. But we have significant amount of work to do on them before we're ready, but we don't have to be ready according to the leases until May 15th. So I'm very confident that we're going to beat that deadline by quite a bit. We also are starting to think about the buoys. I'm going to think I got an overflight scheduled with the Coast Guard to fly over Eel Point Channel and get some photos of that, and just the rest of the places where we have to mark a navigable waterway, get some pictures so that we're ready to do that. Hiring, we are just about done. I think we are at full capacity for lifeguards this year. We're hiring 55 lifeguards. And dock staff, we are just about done with that too. That should wrap up this week as well. We have, we're ready to do beach week, our beach week for the lifeguards. We still is going to begin for the head guards. It begins on the 14th. And for the regular guards, it starts the following week. And we're going to see what we can do about last year. Because of COVID, we were on the beaches on the weekends a little bit before we opened with some of our returning guards that know the thing, just roving on ATVs. I'm hoping to do the same thing. I do think we're intending on being pretty busy again this year. Early, just because of the social distancing thing, I guess, is still being pushed. So housing is going to be interesting. We're still trying to finalize that for all of our lifeguards right now. According to the state, we can only have one person per room. So we're working to resolve that issue. The town is helping us try to come up with a solution for that. As far as the regulations go, I don't think it's been scheduled to go in front of the Board of Selectmen yet. But I know that they were, they would like to have your guys' input as soon as possible. But I mean, if that gets done by email or whatever the case may be, that's fine. The Monomoy thing is a big thing. The big thing that everybody needs to remember is it is not our idea. We are happy with the way things are, but the people that live on Monomoy are not. And so they have gone to some members of the Board of Selectmen already, and some members in Libby, and people in town administration, saying that they want some type of resolution over there. And just a reminder, what our resolution was to issue stickers to all of the mooring holders that have moorings in the Monomoy area, both near in Cathcart and off of Berkeley Avenue by Mr. Gershner's house, where the dinghy racks are. And then people that did not have moorings there, what we're going to do is give them an additional sticker. They put the additional sticker on their dinghy or a kayak if they're using it. The problem with that is going to be where we're going to get the pushback is from the stand-up paddle boarders in the kayakers. But we did come up with an idea to work with the land bank in making some additional racks for the kayaks and stand-up paddle boards, to do that at on 34 Washington Street on the other end of the property. We already have one dinghy rack there. Built some additional ones there on Mr. Glowacki's property that's next to 34 Washington Street. The land bank has acquired that property, and to do them at Francis Street, but they just want one layer of them down there so that it's not to block the view. So that's pretty much all I have on that. And then just the rest of the regulations that are in. We are looking at the Airbnb thing. I think our resolution is okay. Again, I'm still working with the Coast Guard on that. In saying that either the owner of the vessel or a licensed captain has to be on board, if they're going to be using it that way. But because I don't know the reason, and I can ask the deputy again why we can't stay no Airbnb. But if we had the owner of the vessel and we had or a licensed captain on board, at least the boat would be able to be moved in case of a storm. We could ensure that there was pump outs being completed to ensure the water quality and all that type of stuff.
Thank you, Sheila.
Welcome.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Dave, Mr. Franzuto.
Yeah, thanks for that report, Sheila. I would recommend to you that if you have the land bank support for additional racks on their properties, that you ensure you get that in writing. And if when it goes to a public hearing, it would be great to have their physical support rather than just, word of mouth. Because, you're going to have a lot of pushback from the public, because there's a lot of people that use those racks island wide, for that matter. The racks came into fruition years ago because it kept the dinghies up off the salt marsh and doing damage. So the racks are a great idea. They're sometimes a pain to maintain, but like I said, my recommendation is make sure you get the land bank's written support and possibly physical support at your public hearing. The other thing about the Airbnb, I've said this every meeting we've discussed this. I'll say it one more time. The regulation does not allow the subletting of moorings. So, I don't know what the deputy's reasoning to allow Airbnbs is, but why he thinks that they have to be allowed. But the owner on board or living on board, no problem. That's perfect. How you get around that with a licensed captain, I don't know. I know that makes it easier to get the thing taken care of if you got a storm coming. But again, no subletting of moorings. I feel that that's just a simple way to deal with that issue.
Yeah, definitely. Yep, that's the perfect answer right there.
And then the other thing, I mean, if Mr. Chairman, if you want to start talking about the slip lottery, I can give you my thoughts on that, or whatever you want to, however you want to handle the other parts of the regulation.
Dave, if you want to continue with all your comments, you've got the floor.
All right. Well, I only have two more comments. Again, in the essence of pushback, who, the slip lottery is difficult at best. I did get clarification from the deputy with some emails back and forth about the procurement requirements for having the lottery. I still believe that you should have a lottery for at least 35 or 40 slips, so people have the the ability to have their boat on the town pier. If I could afford it, I would love to have a slip at the town pier. But the point is that it gets 35 people in boating, and the lottery, as it's conducted, is a fair way to do that, as long as Tom's concerns from before about the advertising and everything. I'm sure that Sheila will advertise it properly and get the word out. But I still think there ought to be, 35 or 40 slips in the lottery. To that point, I would like also the new regulation says that if you get a slip, you give up your mooring. That, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, that does not work. Because a lottery is a lottery, and you win the lottery one year, and what are you going to do the next year when you don't get a slip? You're going to sell your boat? You're going to stop boating because you didn't get a slip? There has to be some provision in there for them to be able to maintain their mooring in some capacity. If they have to pay a premium to keep that mooring, fine. But somebody relinquishing their mooring permit because they got a slip, the other thing is that there's always one of the things that we used to tell people when they weren't successful in the lottery is, well, put your boat on your mooring and continue to use your boat, or rent a slip in the boat basin. There are some alternatives. If you're a member of one of the yacht clubs, there's some alternative. But to relinquish your mooring just because you were lucky one year, I don't believe that's correct. That's all my comments. Tom's got some more stuff.
Well, just a second. I just wanted, Sheila, is there anything there you wanted to respond to first?
Yeah, I don't think he was thinking to, I don't think the regulation was to, if you want it for 1 year to give up your mooring, but if it was going to be, if you got a slip and you were going to stay on the town pier until you got out of boating or sold your boat or changed your mind, those people would give up their moorings.
All right.
Not the 1 year people.
Okay, all right, I stand corrected. That I have no problem with. If I'm gonna be on there until I quit, then fine. They should.
Yeah,
push more.
because the thought behind that was it'll open it up to some new people.
Yeah,
to get
now
into boating.
I understand. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Tom, I see you'd like to chime in.
Yeah. Thanks. Sorry, I'm going to go through some detailed stuff. I will not be here at the next meeting because I'll be in the air coming back from California. So I have some thoughts about all aspects of these things. And there's a little bit of a dump here, so bear with me. Regarding the dinghies, I understand the issue, and I thank Sheila for telling us a little bit more about where it came from. But I see it as a bigger issue at Berkeley Avenue than it is at Cathcart, because Cathcart is a larger land bank property. And I can understand there might be some need to keep people off of the adjacent private properties, but the land bank property has room for more racks. And it is a really popular place for kayaks, notwithstanding the fact that Peter wouldn't want to leave his kayak there. There are lots of kayaks that have been left there, and kayaking is becoming very popular. It is a recreational aspect of the island, and there's no reason why a kayaker should have less standing than a boater. So I'm kind of looking at that saying, and I do like the idea of the Washington Street and the Francis Street, but I think at various times parking in those areas is really hard to find, especially if you're going to go out for a while. Whereas a Cathcart, you can go out and there's generally some parking there as they did that. So my feeling is that there should be some way to keep kayaks at Cathcart if we can, and get a bigger rack. I believe there's enough room on the land bank property. I could be wrong, but for almost doubling the rack space there. So that's my comment about that. The slip auction for me is a large problem, and it's a large problem for a number of reasons. The biggest reason is I do not agree with the idea that people who get a slip should automatically be allowed to renew. That's basically giving someone public property in perpetuity. If somebody wants to go through the procurement process and get a lease on public property, like at the jetties or at Surfside, and run their business through there, because that'd be, they have a limit of usually 5 years or something. So the idea that somebody can get a slip and can have it for perpetuity, I think is a bad idea, probably illegal for the town to do that. And I don't support that. If you want to do 2 years, that's fine. But I think that the first year you need to publish these rules. I have to say the slip auction is very hard to find online. If you were going to research what the slip auction is, you'd have a damn hard time, or maybe I have a damn hard time, and I'm pretty savvy with the computer, a damn hard time finding out what it is, how it works, what the price is. It's, you'd have to go in and ask. I think that you need to advertise the change, and then you need to put all the slips in for the first year, because people may have not gone before, but if you find out, as I will, that you're going to lose your opportunity to go into a slip, I think that becomes a big problem, because you're basically taking, when I talked before about it appearing like it's an inside job, now it looks like an inside job, because some people who have slips now are going to be given them forever. And I think there's something really wrong with that. And I don't support that. If you want to do a 2-year proposal, go do that. With David's thing about giving up a mooring, let's say you're on there and you do it, but then you have a financial problem and you decide you can't afford the lease on the mooring, on the slip, and you want to keep your boat in the water. But now there's a waiting list for moorings again. So now you're at a point where now you can't keep your boat in there. So you sort of, if you make them give up a mooring spot, then you basically force them to stay on the slip, which I think, one, besides the fact I don't think it's fair or legal to have an unlimited slip, I think that it's hard if someone has a hard time financially and then decides they want to go back to a mooring, and all of a sudden, their boat's sitting on their trailer in their yard until they come back up for a mooring. So there are lots of things about the slip auction I think have to be thought about. And as it's supported, as it's written now, I couldn't give it support. Now I won't be here to vote, so you guys can do what you want with it. But those are my thoughts.
Thank you,
Can I,
Tim.
can I respond to some of that?
Please do.
Okay, so it is 100% legal. It is how a lot of other marinas, Saquatucket, a lot of other places on the Cape. We're probably one of the last ones that still has a lottery. Everybody else does it by a wait list, and you can put it on the wait list, and you go from there. And if so that's one point. It is legal. We're definitely not going to set out to do something that's illegal. So we've done our research. We've passed it on. We've looked it up. It is legal. There's 2 ways that you can do it. One is by lottery, which hardly anybody else does, and the other is by wait list. So that's that. I agree with Dave. Like it's fine. Like if we did half of them do an annual lottery for 40 of the slips, whatever. But it's up to you guys. I mean, the lottery, it is advertised. Certainly we get a lot of applicants, so some people are finding it, but where it is, how it's described is chapter 250 of the Nantucket regulations, waterways regulations. It talks about prices, how you get there, who's entitled, how many slips, when the auction is. It's really laid out very, very well in chapter 250.
Yeah, you got to know, that's a lot of inside baseball, Sheila. I'm sorry to say, they have to look at the regulation to know to know the town does a lottery
Well, we put it, we
for
also
something
put
like
it,
that.
we also put it in the newspaper.
We talked about the newspaper thing, yeah, and everybody, if you look at every little 3x5 block in the paper every week, and you assume that most people are actually reading the paper every week, and I understand that's legal and that's appropriate and that's what you did. I think that starting this without a lottery of every slip is changing the rules in favor of people who happen to win the lottery last time. And I think that is incredibly wrong. And that's my view. And it may be legal, but it's not right to give somebody property in perpetuity unless you're going to have a wait list, and then everybody who gets on it based upon the time they've been on the wait list, much like the mooring list. But to kind of just say, boom, people who won the lottery last year now have it in perpetuity, and people who didn't know that the lottery was going to give you a perpetuity slip. No one was informed that if you won the lottery last year, you could have your slip forever. That's the problem, and that you can't fix.
Oh. Mr. Brace.
Yeah, I hear what Mr. Sadlowski is saying, and I agree that a change like this where you get the slip for life, that needs to be better publicized. But on the other hand, in defense of the town and Sheila, they're doing what they can to let the public know. They are putting it into the paper. And I have an example that is kind of like this. There's a friend of mine who runs the Nantucket boat rental down at the boat basin. And he read me the riot act by email about the Airbnb thing and not knowing about the meetings and what the hell was going on and how come he didn't know about the meetings and why didn't anybody tell him? And I told him, we are an advisory board. We don't have to advertise in the paper, but we make every effort to contact people. We contacted the liveaboard guys. We post our meetings. We're doing what we're required to do. And even a board that's a regulatory board that has a staff and a budget doesn't have the means to make sure that everybody on the island knows this. The people that want to know will find out. I know that doesn't sound really that fair, but then going back to Mr. Sadlowski's concerns, yes, I think that something like this type of change, which is a once in a decades change, should be more publicized. And I guess that takes a call to the newspaper and saying, hey, we're doing this. Here's a press release. We're making this change, and here we're doing this. That doesn't mean that the newspaper is going to take the press release and put it on the front page or even write a story, but at least the effort was made. I just think that it's a gray area, that Sheila's doing what the town says. We have to advertise. We're doing that. If the general public every single person doesn't find out, it's
it's going to go to public hearing. Did these go to public hearing, correct?
Yeah.
So that will be that. And I don't think in there it says that if you were on last year, meaning 2020, that we weren't going to run a lottery this year. I don't think that we've even come to that conclusion yet. I don't know that. So, I mean, the advertisement, he told me before he wanted to see it in Facebook. It'll go on Facebook. If he told me he wants to see it on Instagram, it'll go on Instagram. Those are not legal requirements, but we can definitely do that and get the word out that way. I can send out an Inky alert and say, hey, the slip lottery is going to be XYZ day. I can, there's definitely ways to make it, I guess, more, but we've done what we've been told to do. And I get it. And if you know, if you guys want to go to the board and the Board of Selectmen and say that you want to keep the lottery the same as it has been, but better advertised, then that's fine too. This is, again, a proposal that we're running by you.
Okay.
Sheila, I don't have a problem with you going through with your proposal. I have a problem with you going through your proposal if you don't start with every slip in the lottery the first time. If the lawyers are telling you that you can do it that way, that's fine. I think after you do that, there ought to be a waiting list for the slips that are in perpetuity.
Of course.
I guess you could lotter them when they come out, but the bottom line is I do think this is the last discussion is over. I understand everything. Thank you for doing more stuff. I do think we do need more publicity with the amount of change that's happening, so that people understand it's a serious change. All the suggestions that have made are great, and I do think that all the slips should be auctioned the first time, and then if you want to do Dave's proposal where some are auctioned every year and some are the as of the perpetuity ones, that's fine. But I want to make sure, and it wasn't clear, and I heard you this time, I want to make sure that people who have slips today aren't automatically in perpetuity because the rule has changed now. That's how I read it. Could be my mistake. So if we run the lottery again with these new rules going forward and increased advertising, I would be happier with that, and I could go along with that. Dave?
Mr.
Yeah.
Fonzuto.
Sheila, so even if these regulations were passed in the next week or well, it can't be a week because they have to advertise for 3 weeks. But if these were passed before, say, the beginning of May, these new regulations for the lottery wouldn't go into effect for this year. It would be in October, right?
Yes, sir. Yep. We
So what
we
Mr.
already have
Sadlowski
the winners for
Right.
this, for 2020, summer 2021.
right, so what Mr. Sadlowski is saying is it could be done with the increase of advertising and public hearings and a write-up from us or whatever to get the word out would be for October, right?
Yes, sir. So there's no
Okay.
decision that needs to be made on that one today, or even within the next 2 months. You know,
Okay, so
we gotta
you're
get
right
it out.
now, you're planning a lottery for the summer of 21.
22.
Summer of 22, summer of 21, last October, we already held it with the recreational A's and the recreational B's. Well, last year was only the 1 year lottery, so it was
Okay.
just for recreational B's.
Okay,
So the slips are, I'm in this process of assigning the slips right now for summer
Okay.
2021, but starting in August, you know, just so everybody can get a chance to see it, we'll just start advertising it all over the
Right.
place, saying that on October XYZ date, it's always the last
Right.
Friday in October. Last Friday in October, we're gonna hold a lottery,
Through-
and whatever
through
you
you-
guys decide to do is what we'll advertise.
through you, Mr. Chairman, Tom, does that help you?
That's all.
is that-
I read that this was going to go in effect and people who had slips could renew them. If every slip goes into the October lottery and some could be forever and some could be annual, I'm happy with that. That
Okay.
actually solves my problem, and I'm sure we'll get enough advertising. We could get the paper, somebody to pick it up, or Daybreak Nantucket, or somebody to start making some comments about it. So at least that we get some publication around so that people can't criticize this as happening behind the scenes. I want to make sure that people know it's happening.
No,
And
sounds-
mostly, obviously Nantucket residents.
It sounds like this.
So
would-
I think this is great. I'm sorry I had so much, but
No,
you know, I got a bug up my ass about the slip out lottery. I'm
no,
really sorry.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you.
So Sheila, I think I may have misunderstood the timing. I should have asked questions, but I think if you do those things, I could support this, and I think you should go ahead with that.
Okay. Board members, anybody else?
Does, Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Franzuto?
does the board have any comments about my idea about maintaining 35 or 40 slips to be always in a lottery? Does anybody have any thoughts about that?
Well, first of all, how many on average are there annually now?
Sheila?
Sheila?
Okay, so we do 42-year leases and 41-year leases. So every other year, there's a lottery for the entire pier. And then, on the opposite year, there's a lottery for 40 slips. We call them recreational A and recreational B. And every other year, it's both. We do the drawing for recreational A and we do the drawing for recreational B. And if we were to do it, keep it that way and just keep it where recreational A ended up being until you got out of boating, then there would be a wait list for the recreational A. So if somebody got out of boating on recreational A, one, they would give up their mooring, and two, there'd be a wait list. So if somebody got out of boating, somebody that was on the wait list would come up and get on, because that's how we keep it legal. And then we would do a lottery annually for the 40 slip for recreational B, which we could price a little bit lower. So it could be more affordable, and the people that get to stay on there until they decide that they don't want to be on there anymore, we charge them more for the slip.
As long as there's 40 becoming available annually, that's what I would like to see.
Well, that's what it sounds like, what she said.
Well,
So,
yeah, I mean, that's if we go with Dave's option. That's Dave's suggestion, and I think it's a good one. So
okay.
that's what he's saying. Because I think the way that it was written up was to have everything be on a wait list. But I think Dave's is a great it meets everybody halfway. So I think it's a good idea.
All right, so if the board agrees with me, then I'd like to take a vote on that so we can send that amendment. At least that amendment. I'm not so sure that we might have a couple more tonight, but Mr. Chairman, would that be appropriate to go ahead and unless somebody is opposed to that idea, if we could take a vote on that?
I need to follow your lead, because I'm going to be truthfully honest with you that the town pier is, for the way it's operated is not on my radar. You guys have a lot of concerns here, and I'm just about at full absorption level on it. And but the most fair to people waiting in line, and the lottery sounds fair. And I mean, Dave, you and Sheila have the most experience with this, and if I hear you both in agreement on something, that all sounds good to me. So
All right, well, I appreciate that.
if there's, as far as procedure goes, if this is already in front of the select board, and just they haven't discussed it yet, and there's time for us to make some type of an amendment and insert a change in here, and we need to do it by vote, it sounds like that would be the proper way to do it. So,
Well, they have to advertise the regulations as they want to be adopted for 3 weeks.
yeah,
So we would have to probably act in a timely manner, but if the board is willing to support that, I think that that's a fair way to keep people engaged with the town pier who wouldn't have who maybe don't have a mooring, who are way down on the mooring list, or have a disability, a reason to be on the town other than whatever. But if the board will support that, then I would appreciate that.
Yeah, and it's not in front of the selectmen yet. We gave it to you guys first. We haven't gone anywhere with it other than to you.
Okay, good, thank you.
so Mr. Brace, if we make an amendment or more tonight, will you be able to get a memo off to the proper recipient? Most likely
Sure.
Erica.
I mean,
Well, why don't you send it to me and then I'll put it in front of the deputy and he can
Okay,
deal with it.
okay.
but I don't see why we need to write a letter. Sheila's sitting right here, and if we say, this is what we want to do,
Yep,
then
yep.
Sheila just makes a note of it and tells Charlie, so.
Yep.
Well, but I appreciate that, and I agree to some degree, but I still think a unanimous vote would be a strong message.
If you think it should be written in a written form, email to Sheila to make it official, you can certainly do that.
I would prefer that if you don't mind.
I don't mind. I'm just saying, I'm just thinking of expediency, that's all. I mean, okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Ms. Andrews,
Yeah, I think that Mr. Franzuto's suggestion is excellent. I'm not on the water anymore, and I gave up my mooring because I wasn't using it, and it didn't seem fair to keep a mooring permit what wasn't being used. So I think if you get a perpetual slip at the town pier, that you ought to give up your mooring, but that if you're in a lottery year to year or 2 years or whatever it is, that that those moorings should continue until you give them up, because as we know, you might not get the lottery. It seems to me that the goal is to not have mooring permits that could be given out unused when people are on the town pier, and conversely, people not getting stuck on land when they don't get on the lottery. I hope I'm being clear.
yes, you are. Well,
That's
thank
all
you.
I have to say.
Thank you, Peter. Well, to dot our i's and cross our t's as a board, I'm fine with entertaining a motion from you, Mr. Franzuto.
I'd like to make a motion to amend the regulation that 40 slips and remain in an annual lottery.
Okay, and is there some place where that lands in the paperwork that we already have from Sheila? Or not? Is this is an addition to the major changes?
Yeah, no, it'll go right in the town lottery part. I'll just bring it, once I get the email, I will forward it to the deputy and I will bring it to his office and discuss it with him, then tell him about the discussion that we had.
Thank you,
All right,
Sheila.
Sheila, you'll make sure it goes in the right section.
Yes, sir. Yep.
Can somebody
All
please,
right, well,
can somebody,
unfortunately, I'm having to read it on my phone.
Yeah, exactly.
Mr.
can
Brace,
somebody please word this how you want it, just roughly? And I'll just the gist of this, I'll pull the rest from the minutes, but just say so I can write it down.
Mr. Franzuto.
Just whatever the preamble, whatever section it would be, then 40 slips will be subject to an annual lottery.
And those are recreational slips?
Right,
Yeah.
recreational slips, and if you leave it like that, then Sheila can plug and play as far as size of boats and people's abilities and where boats fit. Shoehorning boats in at the town pier is an art. Some boats don't sit right in certain slips, and people can't tie them up in certain slips, and so let her have the flexibility that to put them where they fit best and sit best. So just say 40 slips are subject to an annual lottery, and then let her worry about the logistics of it.
And so that's along with people who are keeping their slips because they've wanted to keep them. In other words, people, am I hearing that right?
Yeah,
change-
what we'll do is, I think we should just keep it the same. We'll just call it recreational A and recreational B. Recreational A will be, until you give it up, recreational B will become part of an annual lottery.
Okay,
So that's the specific, Peter, that I was looking for. The recreational B slips would be subject to an annual lottery.
okay.
Mr. Sidlowski.
And I just want clarification, because I thought I heard this, but I want to make sure this is true. The recreational A slips, which are every other year, are up for auction in October of 2021 for the 2022 season.
Yep, everything's
Okay.
gonna be up for auction.
Good. Then as long as they're up for auction, we don't need to make a note about it, because they'll come up automatically. So they're going to be auctioned. Thank you. I'm very happy with that.
Mr. Bossy.
The notion that that those who win an A slip, so they'll be there permanently year to year. Do we have a requirement already to have them give up their mooring if they possess one?
Nope,
would
that's gonna be part of the new requirements. That they
Okay,
give up their mooring, and that a wait list gets established for those that want to be part of the A.
Okay, thank you. Good. I think we're there.
Okay. So did you
That's my-
get that
that's
down,
my
Mr.
motion.
Brace?
Yes, 40 slips subject to the annual lottery will only be the recreational B slips. Is that correct?
That's,
Yep.
yes.
Okay, so at this point, this is a motion made by Mr. Franzuto that has not been seconded. Any more discussion? Or I'd like to have
I
a
will second the motion.
Okay, so now we have a second on the motion from Mr. Sidlowski. Is there any more discussion? Not seeing any. Mr. All in favor, Mr. Bossy,
Aye.
Ms. Andrews,
Aye.
Mr. Brace? And the chair votes aye as well. So we have a unanimous vote for this amendment.
Thank you.
Is there anything else? I'd like to go back to a simpler question for Sheila, sorry. But Sheila, as far as the housing goes for the lifeguards, you still keep it separate, male housing and female housing?
Yes,
And what are the time periods that you need them for, dates of arrival and departure?
like if we could get them for like June 10th through Labor Day.
Okay. Is there a budget?
I don't know yet, but I can email you that. I am I can get in touch with the housing guy and see where he is on it.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that, Sheila.
Okay.
uh,
I gotta go get my taxes done at 6. Is that all right?
Okay, yes. Thank you,
Okay.
Sheila.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for everything. I appreciate it. I'll get that to the deputy as soon as I get it. I appreciate everything.
All right. Any
All right.
last minute questions for Sheila before she goes? Not seeing any. Thank you, Sheila.
Thank you.
Any more discussion on Marine Department report, board members? Not hearing any, we'll move forward to natural resources. Tara, please, if you will.
Sure. So I talked to Joanne and JC today. They're putting together the trip reports for the Bay Scallop commercial season. And they're still waiting on a few to come in, but it looks like this year it's going to be around 8,000 bushels for the year. And yeah, so she said as soon as she gets a final count, she would let me know. In other news, the bird fencing is up on the town beaches, and monitoring is now going on. And there was some dune stabilization that occurred at Millie's Bridge on March 24th to help with resilience efforts in the Hither Creek area. I think you guys knew about that. Sacajah Pond was open on Thursday and it closed on Monday. And then Hummock Pond was open on Monday, and as far as I know, it's still open. In hatchery news, we had an oyster spawn, and yesterday we set around 6 million oysters on shell bags that had recycled shell from the restaurants. And we have another 6.5 million left that are going to be set on these oyster castles with the Nantucket Conservation Foundation project. So we received the oyster castles today, which are just big, giant concrete Legos, and we put them in our tanks and they're curing overnight. And then we will put the oysters on them tomorrow. And hopefully they'll attach, and then later in the summer we can move them out to the site and they'll hopefully form an oyster reef. The Bay scallops that we spawned are 1 millimeter big right now. We're holding those in the hatchery until the water warms up outside. I think the harbor temp is up to 48. So we're looking, for something in the mid to late 50s before we start doing that. And our next scallop spawn is April 26th, and then we'll have 5 more spawns after that. On Thursday, we're going to go out dredging for some seed so that we are able to facilitate our spawns this summer. And shell recycling is still going on. Restaurants are starting to open up, so we're starting to get more requests for shell pickup. And let's see what else. I have some answers to some questions from the last meeting that Leah told me about. I know that you guys had asked about the Jersey barriers at Millie's Bridge and how they're in disarray. I don't know if you've heard any information on that, but I did try to contact Rob McNeil today, and we were just playing phone tag, so I wasn't able to get an answer on that one. As far as, I think you guys asked some questions about My Comet Pond and whether it could be opened or not. And Thais said that we do have a permit now that it could be open in cases of extreme water level.
Well,
Let's see.
the question
They did
there
install
was-
water loggers at the end of the summer
the
into
question
the
there was
groundwater
about-
monitoring wells.
Yeah,
What's that?
it was about the monitoring more so.
Okay, so they installed 2 water loggers there, and they record the levels once a day, every day. One of the wells closer to the golf course has ranged from 4 to 6 feet, and then the one closer to the pond has been considerably less, ranging from 1/2 foot to 2 feet of water. So I'm not sure if that answered your question that you were asking. The other thing is that they're looking at small scale solutions to mitigate blooms in My Comet. The town isn't doing any plant removal as of now, but she did say that the Pond Coalition and the Land Bank might be applying some chemical treatments to take care of some of the plants on their property. And then the other thing that we're working on in our department is we're applying for a municipal vulnerability grant. And I'm happy to talk more about that if you guys are interested, but basically we're looking to basically fund our eelgrass surveys for this season. We've done them for the past 2 years with Stephen Heck from Stony Brook University. And we just received his report from 2020, and there's definitely some substantial eelgrass loss going on all over the harbor. In 2019, we were optimistic. We saw an increase from 2014, and we thought that, you know, some areas of the harbor were rebounding, but the 2020 report didn't continue on that trend. So we're interested in continuing our surveys this year. So this grant is something that the town thought was important and applicable for applying for. So that's one thing that we're working on. And we also have interns that are hired. They start mid-May and go until the end of September. We're also looking for housing for 2 of them. And yeah, that's it.
Mr. Franzuto.
A couple of things. Tara, could you send me a copy of Steve Heck's report?
I can. It's a draft form, so Jeff and I are reviewing it, but I'm happy to send it to you.
Okay.
I'm
And
happy
then
to.
the other question is, have you guys been able to figure out, or I'm sorry, that's the wrong way to say that. Have you guys, no, let me put it, has the DMF figured out about the water quality testing closure by Jackson's Point? I know you guys figured it out, but have they figured it out why they want to continue to keep that closed?
You know, there's a lot of things going on with the DMF right now that we are confused about, and we're getting conflicting answers. We've had several Zoom calls with members of the DMF to ask questions specific to water quality and moorings, because it's kind of a hot topic right now. And I haven't really been satisfied with a lot of the answers, but basically what I think happened in that area is that I think that there were some fecal coliform levels that were high, and they did more of like a blanket closure. But they did go ahead and say that it was okay to harvest bay scallops and conch. However, if we felt that we couldn't enforce it, then it could remain closed. And it was decided by the warden that he could not enforce it. So that's why it was closed.
Okay, all right. So it's the DMF is still having a lot of difficulties. I know, because I was talking to McKenna, and it's like a wild west. Nobody knows what each other, they don't even know what each other are doing.
Yeah, I mean, it's something to stay on top of, and it's something that I'm concerned about, because I think I talked to you guys earlier about how they are making closures in areas where there are like, 15 moorings or more. Just
Yeah.
because moorings in the area, they are automatically assuming that people are dumping in the water and that the shellfish are.
That's so silly.
It is. And so we've been talking to them and having meetings about that and saying, well, what about our pump out program? What about our shellfish management plan? What about all this proactive stuff that we're doing that other communities are not? Will you make allowances for it? And so I think they'll probably work with us. It's just going to be like a lot of work to.
All right, well, my suggestion, Mr. Chairman, is when she comes up with the bullet points of what Nantucket is doing, including water quality testing since 1989, that if she would provide us those bullet points, then we could write a letter of support to the DMF in support of their efforts. But Tara would give us the meat, and we would just sign on with the appropriate language. So they know that other people are looking at this, and they're not fighting this fight by themselves.
Yeah, it's just mostly concerning to me because the areas that are affected are recreational scalloping areas, and they're areas that are easy
Sure.
to access for, people that are older or maybe don't have boats. It's just, those are the easy places, and those are the places that they're looking at shutting down.
Yeah, we've always tried to, balance that, and it's a scalloping is just as important a resource as boating, and that
Yeah.
we got to balance that. But Mr. Chairman, I'd like to support her to the DMF because they seem to be all over the highway right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I will let you guys know.
Okay. Mr.
Mr.
Sadowski.
Chairman? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Ginger.
Ginger, okay.
Oh, I was just going to ask a quick question about eelgrass loss overall. What would you say would be the percentage that's lost in the last 20 years? I've been reading up some reports and I, wanted updated information.
Well, here's just like a sentence from the summary, and it just says, survey locations with high eelgrass percent cover during 2006 experienced severe declines to 2020. It went from 55.6% of eelgrass coverage to 22.4.
So
Okay.
30%.
All right.
So I want to report that I did actually attend most of Zastropalooza. And for those of you who are ever thinking of it in the future, it's mainly an academic program for like over 4 hours. And they talk a lot about how they do their studies. So there's a lot about the techniques and the toys and the things they do. There's a little bit to learn. And I did learn one thing, which was somebody did a study that eelgrass actually grows on a lot of different soils and sands and stones. And so eelgrass is pretty durable at growing things. So our problem probably is less the surface and more the water and what's in the water than what the surface of the harbor is. But that was just one study. I don't know what you think about that, Tara. Maybe it's the pollution more than the changing sand structure.
Yeah, I think that has a lot to do with it. We are working on a project with the Land Council to do eelgrass planting seeds this year on Hussey Shoal, and then possibly in a small area up in Fifth Bend.
And Tara, I mean, reverting way back to when Cormac was at a meeting back when he was on the Land Council, and when they were just in the process of doing their pilot area, and he did mention that the root systems need a base that has some nutrients in it. And you've heard us, or me for the most part, bring up my thoughts on some pilot dredging, and feeling that there's just an awful lot of sand that has slumped into the harbor with shoreline erosion. Can you give us your thoughts, opinion directly towards that, as far as the effects on the eelgrass beds from all the eroding, shifting sands?
I think that it's going to be important. Not only to continue our surveys that we're doing, but also to do the aerial surveys. I think a lot of that will give us an idea of what's changed and how the sands have shifted and changed with the harbor. I would probably be interested in having a more in-depth hydrodynamic study of the harbor, just to know, with forecasting the usual winter winds and stuff like that, what would make the most sense, because you don't want to do a project with, the sand is moving all around the harbor, and it seems pretty reasonable that eelgrass beds are going to get covered up. So yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen any studies where people have dredged and then planted, or dredged and then done something like that. So it's not to say that it can't be done. I just haven't seen a lot of studies about it.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Chairman?
Ginger, please.
Yeah, well, some of the reading that I did suggested that nitrogen, phosphorus were important, and water temperature also. So if the sand is made at areas a lot shallower, that might heat up more quickly with the sun, depending on where they are, or the water flow. Some of the eelgrass after the blight of the 1930s came back faster, where there was more change of currents. So, there's a lot of factors, and I think, that more studies are a good thing here. So that's all I have to say.
Thanks, Ginger. Other board members on any other topics with natural resources tonight? Tara, I just wanted to clarify, because the question was mine, is on the level of Maya Comet Pond, because I'm just backing up a couple of years to one of the solutions that Mr. Carlson had mentioned would be to have a monitoring well that installed specifically for monitoring the height of Maya Comet Pond for emergency situations. And I was hoping within that, whether a well is installed or whether you use an existing well from the golf course, either way, that's fine with me. I'm just wondering if there's a correlation between that well and a benchmark of height that becomes an issue. And if that benchmark has been made so that to avoid the disasters from happening and people's basements having water seep in, do we know what that height is in correlation with keeping the monitoring height of Maya Comet, and knowing that, okay, we need to look into possibly opening it before something happens. Basically, that was my thoughts and question on that.
Okay, I will definitely bring that up with Thais and ask her. I don't know logistically. I mean, I think it's fairly easy to install a monitoring well for that purpose. So we can just see if there's.
But then correlating with a couple of those, right now, the simplest, you've with JC right in your department and his uncle being one of the first who was negatively affected by this, I was hoping there'd be some type of communication there to try to establish this benchmark that almost say sets off an alarm at your well. Okay, we're reaching this level where people could be having a problem in the near future, or if that's not a good way of measurement, then and if waiting for a phone call is makes more sense, just let me know. Mr. Franzuto.
Yeah, Tara, that Rosemary Black Ears report that did the assessment on Maya Comet Pond, it established levels against a benchmark for the height of the pond.
Okay.
So if you look at that, there it's in there that'll explain. That was a $150,000 report that explained the management of that pond, and the benchmark established, Mr. Chairman, like you're asking for.
In relation to actual basement in the ground.
Actual height of the pond, yeah.
Okay,
Thanks, Dave.
great. Thank you.
Tara, if I'm not mistaken, I think there's like 3 monitoring wells along that road at different locations, starting at the pond, at the ocean end, not at the very end, but down that way, working your way up the pond. So I think that would help.
Okay, thank you.
What was that report called, Dave?
It's the Maya Comet Pond assessment. It was done by a woman named Rosemary Blackear, who worked for a company called Earth Tech, who did a bunch of work on Nantucket for 20 years. So she very well versed in water management, and it's a darn good report. I got to tell you.
Dave, do you remember what year that report was done?
Try about 2010.
Okay.
And Rosemary's last name again? Rosemary what?
Blackear, BLACQUIER.
Thanks, Dave. That's awesome. And thank you, Tara. Is there anything else, questions from the board for Tara tonight?
Tara, you want to see Albemarle Sound?
See
No,
what?
I miss it.
Sorry, I had to show Tara.
Okay. Questions from the public for either Marine Department or Natural Resources? Not seeing or hearing any. We will move forward into old business. Update on proposed amendments to Airbnb and liveaboard regulations. I think we've covered it, but if there's anything else, I guess now's the time to speak up, seeing as it's on the agenda. Not seeing any. The oyster lease permit review. Do we have any, is Mr. Lambrecht here tonight, Mr. Brace?
No, he's not.
All right. Anything, anything fresh from your department, Tara, that's been forwarded on to you?
Jeff just texted me today and said that there wasn't any news on any progress.
Okay. All right. Well, our next meeting's April 20th. He has till April 15th. Let's hope he's busy right now, I guess. Anybody want to comment on this? Mr. Brace?
If the deadline is April 15th, can we then expect Jeff to be coming in and saying, okay, let's wrap this up? And,
Yeah.
you know, maybe we should reach out to Mr. Lambrecht to make sure that he comes to that meeting.
Well, the meeting's the 20th, and really, you know, Jeff has 5 days to act before our meeting, and I think we've left it in Jeff's hands with our vote to give him the 15th. So certainly we'll have it on our agenda to discuss the 20th. But you know, we'll see what pans out between those 5 days as well. So if there's anything else from board members on that issue, speak so now. Not seeing or hearing any. Excessive sand and scallops. I think Tara just answered things for the moment anyway, unless any other board members have anything they'd like to add. So now, not seeing any, we'll move forward to health of the harbor, excessive lawn fertilizer use. Any discussion? Updates? When do they get to begin applying, Tara?
I feel like I just read that it was like April 15th or April 20th.
Okay.
I'll have to double
mean,
check on that.
Depending upon the neighborhood you're in, you can tell right away when you smell it in a still foggy night. Because boy, they come out in force applying with that date. And I don't know, Tara, is there anything in the works to strengthen or tighten restrictions, lessen the amounts? Anything that you know of that you could share with us in movements in that area?
I know it's been under discussion to, I don't know if I want to say amend, but to kind of, I don't know, beef up or add to some of the regulations. Jeff had said that they were making some changes, but they weren't really substantial. So yeah, I don't really have anything specific on it, but he said that they were talking about changing it a bit.
So it's on their radar.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Board members, anything to add? Not seeing any. FDA shellfish taking prohibition in mooring fields. Did we discuss this already? Is there something more? Or this was, did Leah ask to keep this on here, Peter,
Yes,
for a future meeting?
going forward, yep.
Okay. So if there's nothing more to add there, we have nothing in new business tonight, so we can move forward to any public questions or comment. Not seeing anything to recap or items you'd like to have on the agenda for next meeting. Board members, mention so now. Otherwise, give either Peter or I a call before the Friday of the next meeting. Usually when we make the agenda, unless it's a holiday weekend, it'll be the Thursday of Thursday before April 20th. Our next meetings are April 20th and May 5th. There's nothing else to discuss tonight. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second?
Ginger.
Second?
Ginger has motioned to adjourn, second by Mr. Bossy. All in favor, Mr. Franzuto,
Aye.
Mr. Sidlowski,
Aye.
Mr. Brace, and Mr. Lowell votes aye as well. Thank you, Tara. Thank you, board members.
Thanks.
Thank you, Kona. Have a good night, everybody.
See you in a couple weeks.
You too.
Take care.
All right, Ginger, thank you.
Yep.